Rice, it's delicious. It's a staple food. It's a side dish. It's a serial killer. Back in 1877 Japan, rice was deadly. How deadly? It almost brought the entirety of Japan to its knees. The emperor, not happy. He's slowly watching his aunt die of an unknown illness. Her body is frail, weak, she's bedridden, and eventually, she dies. What is the cause of death? Heart failure. This wasn't new to the emperor and his band of merry men. They've all suffered from this unknown illness once or twice in their lives, but for some reason, in recent years, this unknown illness has gotten a lot more deadly. The emperor had enough. It was time for a change. It was time to dump money into research. It was time for Edo science. The reason why the emperor started dumping so much money into researching this unknown illness was because of one thing: the victims of the illness. Most illnesses that plagued nations back in the 1800s, and even today, tend to affect the poorer, lower classes of society first. However, this unknown illness had one target and one target only: the upper echelons of society. That's right, your fat cats, your bigwigs. If you're in the upper echelons of society, fucking lock your doors at night, boy, because this illness is coming to get you. The poorest of society generally went unscathed, and eventually, this unknown illness was given a name: Edo Wazurai, or the Edo illness. Very, very imaginative naming senses there, Edo times people, good job. But how did something as simple as rice target only the upper echelons of society while leaving the poorer classes completely unscathed? Well, it wasn't the rice per se, but how the rice was treated. You see, in the Edo period, white rice was seen as a status symbol, and they would eat white rice in rich people parties to the detriment of other foods. They would ignore their meats, their fishes, their miso soups, all that good stuff you want from a balanced Japanese meal, just to focus on the white rice. Now, if they were just eating white rice, maybe that wouldn't be too much of a problem, but when it came to white rice, Edo period rich people had a massive problem. They would polish the living hell out of this rice until it was the cleanest, pristinest, and gleaniest rice you've seen this side of Mount Fuji. This was a laborious task to polish rice to this level in the Edo period. It was not worth it by any means. I know what you're thinking. What's the problem with polishing the ever-loving hell out of some rice? Who's getting hurt? Well, we know everyone, all the rich people, all the rich people are getting hurt, and this was generally the problem. The problem is, removing all those outside layers of rice also removes an essential vitamin you need to live: thiamine, or vitamin B1. Without thiamine, animals and humans develop this weird Edo illness, also known as kaki or the Bedi Bedi illness. There's definitely a fruit in One Piece called the Bedi Bedi no Mi. Someone look that up. Today, with 2024 knowledge, we can look back in time and go, haha, the rice was the problem. But at the time, it took them a long time to realize that over-polishing of rice was causing this B1 deficiency, and thus giving them the Edo virus, or the Bedi Bedi virus. Back to the Edo doctors. Edo period doctors were stumped. They had no idea what was causing this unknown illness and was trying every trick in the book to try and defeat it. One theory: damp. They believed the cold, damp ground was giving people the Edo illness for some reason. One doctor was really thinking outside the box. He looked at the damp hypothesis and was like, this is stupid. I know what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna administer a bunch of different medicinal herbs to a couple of samurais and also a fasting regimen. This is gonna solve the problem. I'm thinking.
We have technology.
The samurai died a few months later. Other doctors took a different approach. They decided to burn a bunch of different incense, a bunch of different medicinal herbs to try to stimulate the chi of the samurai in order to sort of cure the Edo illness. This also didn't work. Even though the true nature of the Edo illness wasn't really understood, some remedies did work. Katsuki Gyudan, an 18th century Edo doctor, decided that maybe Edo was the problem. He wrote that samurai would come to Edo and contract the Edo virus from the water in the soil. He then noticed that only samurai who went home using the Hokone pass would eventually be cured of their Edo illness. Katsuki was quoted in saying that for those who contract the Edo illness, you must move quickly, for the worst case scenario always results in death. Since heavily processed white rice was less available outside Edo, especially in the countrysides, those that left Edo found themselves being cured of their Edo illness. It also helped that doctors in those areas would prescribe barley and red beans to people who came into the area. Those ingredients just happened to be a high source of thiamine, and thus cured them of their Edo illness. At age 31, Princess Kazu succumbed to the Edo illness. This was the same illness that killed her husband, the former shogun, just a decade earlier.
2 weeks from retirement. Good luck!
Ow, my fucking dick!
This death underscored the gravity of the situation, and it didn't help that with new technology coming into Japan, getting processed white rice had become even easier. With the widespread adoption of machine-milled polished rice, not only could the upper echelons enjoy that gleamy white rice, but also it became rations for the armies, the navies of Japan. The choice was influenced by the fact that white rice was less bulky and also had a longer shelf life than brown rice. So for Navy expeditions, white rice was the go-to ration for ships. However, this massive dietary shift on naval ships of course caused massive outbreaks of the Edo illness on boats. And once again, Edo period doctors were stumped. They could not connect the dots on this one, guys. The disease spared no one. Unlike the Edo illness of a couple years ago that only affected the upper echelons of society, every single person on these boats was getting rocked by the Edo illness. Soldiers, gallery men, captains, does not matter. If you were eating the rice, you're getting the illness. Simple as that. Enter Dr. Takaki Kanehiro. From his returns from medical school in London mentioned in the chat, boys, he finally was in a position to make some meaningful change. Surveilling the ailing soldiers, he noticed a pattern. The rate of Edo illness was highest amongst prisoners, lowest amongst soldiers and petty officers, and lowest amongst the officer class. This revelation marked the beginning of a significant effort to finally combat the disease. Takaki sat and thought, what is the major difference between these groups? And then it hit him. Diet. At first, Takaki believed maybe the lack of protein in the diets was causing the outbreak of the Edo illness. This really contradicted the most common theory at the time, which was that the Edo illness was actually caused by bacteria. Takaki managed to get a meeting with the emperor. He sat him down, discussed his theories, and begged, beseeched him for some way he can test these theories in the field. The way he convinced the emperor? Baller. He said, if the cause of this disease is discovered by someone outside of Japan, it would be dishonorable. I mean, talk about blackmailing the flippin' emperor, dude. Nicely done, Jesus. It was pretty bad, considering in 1883, 120 Japanese sailors out of 1,000 had the Edo illness. Now I know what you're thinking, 120 out of every 1,000 soldiers isn't that much, but the vast majority of these soldiers did end up dying. And Takaki even looked at international navies and Western navies and realized, why don't these guys have the Edo illness? Why is it just affecting us? Takaki wanted to take the diet from the Western Navy ships and bring them onto Japanese ships. However, the problem was the Western diet was really expensive at the time. And also, Japanese sailors were really scared of eating bread. You scared of a complex carb, my dude? You scared of a complex carb, my boy? Get it together. Get serious, my dude. Bread's delicious. Come on. In 1883, a ship full of cadets had gone out for a little training excursion to New Zealand, South America, Hawaii, and back again. However, on their return, out of the 370 crewmates, 169 had contracted the Edo illness, and 25 had sadly died. Takaki proposed an experiment. Let's take another ship out on the exact same route. Madness, people cried. Insanity, they yelled from the top of their thatched houses. What is wrong with this man? Somebody stop him, think of the children. But Takaki had a plan. He was going to take the Tsukuba on the exact same route. However, instead of overly polished rice, he was going to bring some bread, a little bit of meat, make a little BOT maybe while you're on the boat. And that was his plan. While the Tsukuba vessel traveled around the same route, Takaki stayed at home in Japan, having restless night's sleep, wondering if his theory was going to work. Because if it turned out that his theory was wrong, he was going to look a damn fool. It was later that he admitted to a student that if the boat came back and a significant amount of people had died, he too was going to kill himself. However, the scuba returned to Japan victorious. Only 14 of the crew members caught the Edo illness, and the only reason they caught the damn Edo illness was because they didn't stick to the prescribed diet of bread and meat, and instead was eating very polished rice during the expedition. Takaki Kanehiro didn't work out that the cause of the Edo illness was a lack of thyroid in the diet, and instead thought it was a lack of protein. However, he did make revolutionary changes to the diets of naval vessels and people living in Japan, which actually stopped people getting the Edo illness. With meat being very expensive at the time, he swapped it out with protein-rich barley, which actually is a great source of thiamine. The Navy was faced with undeniable proof and started mixing in barley into the rations. And guess what happened? In a few years, the Edo illness, it was gone. For the Navy at least. The Army didn't get the memo. They were still eating a highly concentrated diet of very polished rice. Why were they still doing it? Japanese soldiers were promised if they conscript to the army, they can have unlimited white rice. And these soldiers did not want that taken away from them. For a lot of them who came from impoverished backgrounds, this was the one and only reason they joined the army. The consequences were devastating. In the Russia-Japan War of 1904, 27,000 Japanese soldiers died to their Edo illness. Compare that to the 47,000 soldiers that died to actual war wounds. How is an illness caused by rice killing the same amount of people as the damn Russians? That's insane. That's incredibly insane. It took a gruesomely long time, but finally, barley rations were handed out to Japanese soldiers, which finally stopped people dying from what is basically a preventable illness. The understanding of vitamins wasn't really there yet, so there was still some kind of debate about, what was the true cause of the Edo illness, blah, 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 blah. But when it came down to it, one thing was flippin' sure, and that is Tataki's efforts saved the lives of millions of people. In 1905, Tataki's efforts were recognized, and he earned a spot in nobility. He also earned a very endearing nickname, the Barley Baron. And that's the story of how the Japanese aristocracy, the higher echelons of society, the navy, the army, and a large section of Japanese society was almost completely wiped out by rice. If you're liking these videos, hit the bell, hit the subscribe button, hit the like, let me know what you guys want to see in the next video in the comments down below. But guys, I'll see you next time. Bye bye.